Well, good afternoon, everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, very
I
nice.
mean, it's a great day, right? You got to wear your green today. So welcome to another week of AVX Live. I'm Joe Gilderson, President of Corporate Audio Visual Services, and I am joined by my co-host, Ryan Finch, Creative Director, Corporate AV.
Hello, hello.
Good to see you, Ryan.
Oh,
I don't see any green, though.
No, I don't really have a lot of green that makes up my wardrobe, so unfortunately this will have to do.
That's a little disappointing, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to give you a little known fact, Ryan. I am 50% Irish.
I didn't know that, actually. Look at that.
A lot of people would not guess that.
No, we wouldn't.
Yeah. My father would say that that's the good half. My mother does not feel the same way.
Okay, well.
But anyways, we get distracted a little bit. For the last 5 weeks, we've spent our time having conversations with really a number of incredible professionals to get their thoughts on digital marketing, virtual events, certainly current trends, and really how they've all been using technology to stay relevant and stay productive, keep in touch with their clients, and as Andrew Castellano would say, to keep moving forward. Now, today, I don't know how to break this to everybody. We don't have a real star of this show today.
Womp womp.
Yeah, it's like I gave it away. I gave the ending away a little too early. Oh, I'm seeing the numbers drop. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. Bye-bye.
But what we're going to do today is Ryan and I are going to have a discussion about hybrid events. And I think we have enough material that we can carry the show for about 28 minutes or so. Because I know that we've done some newsletters recently and hybrid events have been a very hot topic. So we figured we'd continue that discussion today. Mr. Ryan, any thoughts on hybrid events to start us off?
Oh, gosh. Well, it is like many things in the virtual setting, it's a bit of a rabbit hole because it doesn't mean just one thing, right? Yes, happy St. Patrick's Day.
I know, I'm sorry. I got distracted again.
Well,
sorry.
Anyway, back on track here. I know, look, we are going off script here today, and that could send us off the rails very quickly. So we'll keep this brief. But again, the hybrid event does not just mean one thing. And I think we've been able to kind of break it down into a few main points. So Joe, why don't you go ahead and introduce the first one?
I think, before we get to the main points, just a reminder why we're doing this thing.
Right.
Really, we're trying to build information for people to share in our community. And our focus is really always on, client experiences, our experiences, and, success goals, reaching your goals, and how you're going to achieve things. So we're going to try to keep that in the back of our mind while we're going through these points. But maybe, Ryan, just some quick housekeeping rules.
Housekeeping rules, Joe's favorite term, right? Smash that subscribe button. No. Like, comment, share, subscribe, please. It is super, super helpful and much, much appreciated. We're doing this every Wednesday at 1 p.m. We'd love to see you as a return guest or return viewer, rather. And of course, if you have any questions, please just send a comment in on whatever channel. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube right now. Whatever channel you're watching, please send us a comment, and we will be happy to answer whatever questions you may have.
Okay, sounds good. Then I guess we'll just get right into it. So we're going to start. We made this 1, 2, 3. So we're going to try to keep things simple because we're AV people and we don't have a lot of higher thoughts here. So, let's just look at, what really the first part is the presenters and the audience. And I guess my question to you is, what's different about the presenters?
Well, and I guess where you have to start is where are they? Right. Because obviously everything is going to change in the conversation, depending on whether they're in person or whether they're virtual. And unfortunately, it seems like a lot of people are scratching their heads trying to figure out, or trying to wait as long as they can to decide if this person is virtual or in person. But I think that gets challenging pretty quick. Would you agree?
Well, absolutely. In over the last 35 years, right, we've done everything in person. As a company at Corporate AV. The last year, Of course, we've done everything virtual. But the interesting part of that is we started streaming events really 12 years ago, and it was a hybrid event. It's just it wasn't really thought of like that. We had an in-person audience. We had in-person presenters. But then we had a camera and we had encoders and streaming equipment in the back of the room, and we were sending that out to an online audience as like a secondary audience. And so I think that becomes one of our big variables. So while this isn't brand new, this has existed for a long time.
Right.
I think the variable now is, are all the presenters in person or are some of the presenters in person? And that is really an interesting piece, right?
It is, because it can change the entire dynamic of a program. It can change the entire set of circumstances and logistics. And that's just talking about the presenter. We haven't even gotten to audience yet.
No, I know. It's funny. So I have one quick image here I'll put up, and maybe stretch that guy out. So this was an event, a hybrid event we did last fall at the Cambria Hotel in White Plains. Our friends over there, great group, great locations, unbeatable. And that was for basically the hospitality organization of Westchester County. So we had 50 people exactly in the in-person audience, all spaced out. It was we had 6-foot markers everywhere. Right. But we also had some people present in person, and then we had some people remotely. So this gentleman was actually presenting remotely and was in the middle of the show. So we were able to have one person at the podium, and then, okay, now we're going to go to Blake. And then we brought him right up. So, here I was, and then there was Blake. And it was very, seamless. There's just things you have to do to prepare that ahead of time. Because in his case, he had a presentation, right? And so now we're sharing that on screen, and there's Blake on screen with the presentation, and it just has to get worked out ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean,
but it was pretty cool.
Absolutely. No, and you touched on a good point there, which is he had a presentation. It's one thing to facilitate a conversation. It's another thing when there's got to be coordination between what is being seen, both in the virtual setting and in the in-person setting. There's a set of circumstances, like just a simple PowerPoint image. If I want to see that presentation alongside of Blake or whoever it might be, then that's pushing us down a little further now into a workflow that we have to be in order to give you that. So it does become something that we have to discuss early on, is whether or not there's a presentation, and then little granular things like, can the person control their own slides? And there are ways that we can set it up so that both the virtual audience and the in-person audience can control their own slides, but there's varying degrees of complexity to that, and different people are comfortable with different tools, and so it really is a rabbit hole, to my earlier point.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to it, but I guess just to say, you were saying, let's define where the presenters are going to be first off, right. And then if they're going to have a presentation, who's going to control it? Like, those are really simple things, right? Right. But they're right at the beginning of the conversation. Right. So it's just, good things. But what about the audience? Like, what's different about the audience?
Well, there's definitely a different sense of engagement. There's obviously, when you're in a room, you have a captive audience. When you're in a virtual setting, you have a not captive audience and someone who is one click away from not watching anymore. So obviously, attention spans are important to manage. The way you structure your program may have to change. I know this kind of alludes into our second point, but there really are, top level things that we have to decide on. There may be people sitting in the room with you, and there may be people who are virtual, and it's important to establish that early on. And then capacities. How many people? It's not just, all right, we have some people who are going to show up here and some people are going to watch there. Like, we do need a sense of how many that is. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And that's going to be defined right now, certainly by locations and states. Right. I mean, the Texas Rangers can have 40,000 people, but, New York can have 150 if you have a capacity of, 400. So I think that variable is going to go out. Government agencies will certainly weigh in on that, depending on how everything's going. But, the fact is that it is opening up. And, I saw a question come in. Let's see. Looks like it's Okay, once the world goes back to in-person events, will hybrid continue to have a big part in meetings and events? I think that's a fair question. And that's what all this plays into. Because the reality is, since we've already seen this for a year now, is it just going to go away? Like, that's the magic question. I mean, personally, I say no way. There's no chance it goes away.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of discussion about that. Like, it's the infrastructure. Once the infrastructure is in place, why leave something that's obviously more efficient in some regards? From a corporate side, obviously the dynamic's a little bit different. On the social events and the fundraisers, I'm sure there's always going to be an appetite for people to be in person, eating dinner together, rubbing elbows, networking, and things like that. And of course, you still can replicate a lot of that. But on the corporate side, it's a completely different animal because we're looking at town halls and business updates and product launches and things that, the budgets can hit the 7-figure or 8-figure range when we're talking about sending, huge regions of employees to other regions of the country. And we're talking about days and days of travel and hotels and things that to people in those settings are probably pretty obvious. Yeah, that's a lot of money. And so if we can create an experience that caters to both people who are in the room and people who are not, and there's a feeling that it's as effective or close to it, then that's a winning combination for them to save huge sums of money. And so while I don't think it will entirely replace, I don't think anyone really thinks it'll entirely replace the in-person aspects. It's going to be something that you can't ignore at a certain point when it's an option that you're familiar with.
Yeah, I think it always depends on what the content is of the event. If it's a presentation, if it's an educational material, right, this is a forum online that you can present that thought fairly clearly, especially if it's in short and chunkable bites, as my friend said. Well, it's a shark reference, Yeah. But to put it in chunkable bites, put it in smaller portions, online is very effective because, even my accountant had told us normally they have continuing education classes, just like lawyers and doctors and everyone else. And he said, normally I'd have to go away for 3 days. Well, now I can do it all online. I can still be working and I didn't have to travel. Right. So it just depends on what the material is, I think, and what your goal is of the event. When you're talking about making those personal connections, unfortunately, this isn't the best way to do that. In person is going to win that battle every time. Right. But it just depends on the event. But maybe that brings us right away to what we're talking about of there being two audiences.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, and that's, I think, what is easily lost sight of in this process, which is you can't create, something that works for half of your audience and not for the other half. It's got to service both, both parties. That doesn't mean it has to be the same, though. And I think that's a kind of a key distinction. And there's a few different ways you could go, and not in any particular order. You could create separate types of content tracks for people who are entirely remote and people who are in person, or you could structure your in-person event to revolve around maximizing the amount of time that we're broadcasting it to the virtual side. Like, we can't pause for dinner. Like, you pause for dinner in the middle of your program and or a lunch break, and it gets pretty hard, especially people watching from different time zones. They're not on lunch.
Right, I'm hungry right now, so. I don't even see lunch in sight. There's 2:00, there's a 3:00. So let's not talk about food right now.
Well, and that's, a case in point. It's managed time. People have calendars, boom, 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 boom. I have a 2:00, a 3:00, a 4:00. If your event bleeds into their 2:30, they're not watching half of your second half of the program. It's got to be bite size. Again, not to feed too much off of Andrew, but it really does have to be kind of parsed down into time blocks that are easy for a virtual audience to follow.
Well, just back to, since we have been doing this for years in that sense, I mean, a conference, a trade show, that type of experience, they really started all this because they could sell an in-person ticket for, call it $1,500, $500, whatever the magic number is. And then they could sell just an online education ticket.
Right.
And so they've been doing this for years. That maybe that ticket is, $99.95. I don't know what it is, but the fact that they've already considered two different experiences, that already exists.
Right.
It's just now we're applying that to a different audience and to, a different type of event. But certainly the material, I mean, we've already started these discussions. Our real first hybrid for this season is coming up in April. I'm sorry, in the very first week of May. And we've already started that discussion that in their case, that's a social type of an event. They have a number of people that will be together, whatever the maximum is allowed safely. They're going to be together. There's a networking and there is a meal that's tied together with that. That's going to be first. And then we're going to our program that will go to everyone at the same time. Everyone will get that same experience for the program. Then the online event is over. And now there may be another section to that in a networking type of capacity for the in-person. But to your point that we're going to reach those two audiences in this case with the same program, but a different experience.
Right. Well, and that also, offers up opportunities to monetize it differently. And I think this is a point you were making yesterday, which is it's kind of creating a different level to the experience. And so maybe you lean into that. Maybe it's a different package that they're paying for. That maybe the in-person is more of a premium thing, and there's things that would be exclusive to that experience. Trying to drive your in-person attendance once obviously the capacity is conducive to that. But having different levels of the experience, maybe again we keep going back to one of Andrew's points, but you are casting a wider net, so you have the possibility to reach a much wider demographic. So again, maybe you're creating a different level of experience just for people who are kicking the tires on your event, right? And that the commitment level is much lower.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, right, this has already existed too,
right,
but in a different way. Think of the entertainment world, especially concerts, who are in the same boat as we are, if not worse at this moment. Right. Because none of those professional musicians can really play to an audience at this point unless they're doing it online.
Right.
Hopefully that changes soon. But for years, that's been a big revenue generator for the high-level big acts, where there's a ticket. Okay, you have a ticket for your seat, your regular seat. Maybe that's $250. Then you have the ticket plus the next level of experience. So let's say you get, you get the T-shirt and you get the bag and you get whatever else. You get the tchotchkes, the paraphernalia.
Yeah, right. A goodie bag. Yeah.
Look what I got. I went through this pandemic and all I got is this damn T-shirt.
But don't wear it to the concert next time. You can't wear the same band T-shirt.
You can't do that. There are rules. I mean, but usually the big winner is that VIP experience.
Right.
And that's where you get to go backstage and you get to meet the artist, or you get to, see something that there's no replicating that. It's all about the experience. And for that, you pay $4,000 and that's booked every single time, because it's no longer just you're sitting watching, but now you're taking part in it. And that's really the big win. And what the NBA is doing right now, and the Wrestling Association is incredible, and we have some friends down in the DC area that are in charge of that fan experience. And it is so cool. I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it, right? Where there's all the audience is, they're using large LED screens, but there's people seated in the audience, right? Interacting, and they're watching and they come on screen. Well, that's there's a price to that, right? It's not free.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it certainly improves the quality of the broadcast coming out to the viewer audience, because it feels like a spectacle.
Yes.
It's that sense of shared experience that is what that drives home.
Well, and I know, I think from all listening to all the different players, like they like seeing people there too, like
Right.
they,
Right.
I know that gives them more motivation, but that experience where the fans are now part of the game
Mm.
is really why people like to attend. I mean, think of a hockey game. Is it better to watch it on TV or to be there in person?
I mean, I don't know. I like watching it on TV, but
You
I
can't
guess
replicate
I'm in
the
the
speed.
minority on that. That's
Well, but you
very
can't
true. Very
replicate the
true.
speed. When you get live to a hockey game, it's incredible. The energy is just incredible,
Absolutely.
more so than some other sports, but
Right.
it's all about that experience. So, I mean, is it out of the realm to say it's halftime and Tom Brady's coming off the field and now he stops instead of doing an interview with the sideline reporter? What if he goes over to a monitor and he touches the screen and says, "Hey Ryan, listen, good to have you here watching the game today." And you come in and say, "Listen, Tom, you really blew it on that
Tom
pass,
Brady.
man." You should never say that. Never say that. We don't even joke around about that around here. But the
I couldn't
point
help
being,
myself.
now you're interacting with
Right.
someone that could be a childhood hero. It could be
Right.
this is something you could never get otherwise.
And
You're never going to have that experience.
it's funny because we've actually seen a lot of that on the virtual side, right? With a come backstage in the virtual audience and speak with the presenters. Like we have had situations where we're sending out a produced broadcast and it's going out to, a conference setting and people are watching it and, commenting and questions and whatnot. But then for a select group of that audience, they are coming, into that broadcast system with us.
Right.
And now they're all kind of connecting. And it's like it really is kind of seen behind the curtain. And so in some regards, that is an easy way to replicate some sort of value exchange for people who, for when the audience is remote. It'd be pretty easy to bring your speaker into a green room with a laptop set up and then it still feels like part of this event. Like I just watched you on stage on a broadcast and now I'm in like a Zoom meeting with you. And it's like, hey, that was so excellent. I have more questions on this. And it's, again, it's another way to add value to specifically, a virtual audience or to an in-person audience, depending on which direction you're going.
Absolutely. I think there's so many creative ideas. Just last week we worked with, a group that we've been a part of for years, and they had a phenomenal idea. Their particular show was going to be magic, and that was the main entertainment to go with their fundraising. That was the focus of this event. And it was so cool. They actually had a VIP Zoom experience with the magician. So the magician literally brought them into the show.
Right.
And then that's what we actually streamed out to the rest of the audience. And it was really good. I got to say, magician's name was Assy Wind, and he was phenomenal. I'd recommend him. He was great.
Absolutely. And that's one of those rare, forms of entertainment that we've been able to see that really can translate to a virtual setting. And credit to him in particular, because ultimately that's, I'm sure, wasn't part of his repertoire, going up on stage and bringing people up with him, and how fluid he was with the technology. That wasn't something that you could have just, set in front of him for the first time and he would have given you the same quality of experience. It was really well done. And I think that maybe that's another tip, right? Is if you're looking for some entertainment, try and find those people, those groups or those performers, whatever it is, who have really excelled in the virtual environment. Because, again, it's got to be a small, it's definitely a smaller crowd, than that kind of net you'd cast in terms of, performers for an in-person event. But you also have access to, a global network, right? And so just going and seeing entertainment and performers and the creative things that they're coming up with. I mean, he had a lot of tools that we use very often that he was so fluid with, and he produced his own show in a sense. So that honestly was such a wonderful experience and something that could easily translate. Again, maybe you have a performer on stage, and for the virtual audience, you have a different performer, right? Speaking about two separate audiences, maybe it's two separate experiences.
Well, I mean, that's part of what people have to figure out.
Right.
But the fact that you can do so much is really it. And that's why this, we're having this discussion and why it's such a hot topic, because I mean, hybrid is our immediate future, and it doesn't mean it's going away. Because why would I want to, and this is going to bring us to our third point, but why would I want to ignore a huge audience? Like that doesn't really make a lot of sense, right?
Not at all.
So, I mean, this tip has come up, especially because we've had a lot of discussion with marketing, people lately, and we're really part of that digital marketing community at this point.
Right.
And every one of them has said, you got to cast a wider net. Like, there's so many people you can reach. That's the true advantage of the digital marketing side. And these online events are digital marketing tools. So
absolutely,
you can reach a much bigger crowd.
Yeah. We've been talking about it, being part of our digital presence, and that really is what it is, right? I mean, like right now we have some people watching this live. We'll surely have more people watching it after it's been recorded. Again, that's something that we know our takeaways is don't worry so much about the live because it lives on these channels forever. So, but that point being said, people are seeing this, and this is a representation of your brand, and this becomes a huge part of your digital presence. So these events and these virtual events and ultimately the hybrid events as well, certainly fit into that, and more eyes are on it, in the digital setting. So it's up to you to take advantage of it.
I mean, you can reach groups. If you're launching a new product, you can reach entirely different market segments.
Right.
If you have a service, you can reach a different geographic area or a different, particular industry. And we've already seen that you can reach across states and across countries and across the giant pond.
Right.
I mean, we were part of Spark a Change, and that was based in Poland. So I was interacting with everyone there. The technical team was in Poland. I got to talk to people from London and Spain and France. It was phenomenal. And then meanwhile, one gentleman who's like 5 miles away that I didn't know. So, I mean, but that's what the online community can do. And so the idea of casting a wider net is really important. But Ryan, is it just the audience?
No, it's the presenters as well. I mean, imagine going to an event, that was always had a local feel, and it's an in-person thing. And, somehow or another, you've been able to get access to a level of presenter that you never would have had before. So now, all right, I just watched the keynote from someone, who's active in the local circuit or, the regional circuit. And now we direct your attention to the screen where live coming in from somewhere far reaching is someone that I just never would have expected this brand to have that kind of exposure to. And so that kind of, speaks to that point is it's not just your audience that has a wider net. It's your presenters and people who are taking the stage, literally or virtually as well. Well,
if you think of that, right, that gives an entirely different perspective too, because what some of the presenters, they can be very expensive too on the cost to bring them in. You now have access. If you didn't have to fly them in and you didn't have to put them up in the hotels and you didn't have to give them blue M&Ms, then you might be able to pay an affordable fee to bring them in for an hour or to bring them in for a half hour, in a virtual experience. But you're sharing that with your entire audience.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a win.
And to the point about things not going away, Joe, if you were a high-level speaker, and you had a book tour or whatever, and I offered you the chance.
You make it sound like I'm not. Is that what you're saying, that I'm not?
Not yet. I mean, look.
Right. Did I say Happy St. Patrick's Day yet?
That doesn't move the needle for me.
I'm sorry.
But if you were a high-level person, right, and I could offer you some sum of money to get on a plane, leave your family, leave your belongings and everything, your whole life,
I would
live on the road for a week.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, it's attractive. That's why it exists. But if I offered you, an hour of work for a percentage of that, and you could knock out 3 or 4 of them in a day, or multiple in the same week. I mean, it's highly efficient, is it not? So if it's highly efficient, then you can expect that we need to cater to it for a longer term than just right now. And that kind of speaks to also your guy. He's doing it really well. Your guy.
My guy?
Your guy.
My guy?
Yeah.
Which guy? Which guy's doing it well?
Well, who's the kingfish right now?
Oh, my guy. You're talking about Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins.
Yeah, Tony Robbins is the master of the virtual world right now. I don't think there's any question. If nobody has seen any of his 360-degree experiences that he has out there right now, just check it out. Just watch one of the commercials and you'll be impressed, just even by the little commercial, because he has definitely he is, taken the online experience and really magnified it.
Yes.
And, I'm sure that that's a financial thing as well as a trying to help people thing. So,
right. Well,
but you're right.
He could probably help more people, per minute than if he was working with flights and airfare.
I think he's getting 60,000 people like per show. So it's a pretty good number. Pretty good number.
Yeah.
When we talk about, I have an image I'll put up for you, Ryan. But when we talk about blending the audiences and blending the presenters, I really think the holy grail is getting them all to communicate together.
Right.
And so how are we going to do that? So we have an in-person presenter, we have a remote presenter, we have in-person audience, we have remote audiences. Now we got to get them to communicate, right? If I'm in that online audience, can I send you a message and you're in the in-person audience? Hey, what do they got for snacks there? I can't experience that. Right. And are we communicating that way? Because that's possible.
Right. Absolutely. And by use of, tools that we've gotten acquainted with, Hopin being, one of the big ones for us. But using a tool that's conducive for that becomes super important, because that is what ultimately facilitates that shared experience. Joe, you'd mentioned, the premise of when you have a broadcast going out, right? Like, let's say I'm watching this on YouTube. I'm watching, the keynote presenter, and it's great. And it's, I'm getting the content. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. But how many people in that room right now who are actually there are on YouTube as well and commenting like, hey, Joe, great point out there in the virtual setting. Like, great point. Like, we should connect sometime. Nobody's doing that. Not in a platform like that. You need something different, right? You need something that is a tool for conferences, for a blend of in-person and virtual, and has a feature set that's conducive to that.
Well, certainly, because there's going to be material you need to share.
Right.
There's going to be things, but it's all about that communicating and engaging with each other. And that's the part, like, everybody's familiar with using Facebook and Instagram, and Twitter's a little bit of a different animal, but those two are certainly, the communication is going back and forth all the time. My son and the others much younger than me, Snapchat and this and that, but I don't really understand it. But it's not meant for me to understand as well. I'm beyond that set. But people are already doing that.
Yeah.
So again, are you just going to kick that away? No. Like, that's so I think that's what everybody has to consider. These are only 3, pieces to the big puzzle we're talking about. But the fact is that we're talking about it, and we have ideas, and we have different ways that people can do these things. And I don't know, we were kicking around some ideas earlier. What do you think about a trade show booth? Like, what can we do with that?
Oh, and that's an interesting premise too, and it has to be scalable, obviously. So if you keep it simple, right, and we drop some sort of device, whether it's an iPad or some sort of tablet or some sort of, one thing that has a screen, has a camera built in, and just make it easy, and we're dropping that in each booth. And then maybe you got 2 reps, one person shaking hands physically, the other person is waiting for someone to show up virtually. And, and that is an easy way to facilitate that kind of, virtual in-person exchange. And it's as simple as just thinking of it from a booth by and using, simple, because it has to be simple if it's going to work at scale, but using simple technology that, that we can drop in each booth.
I think the world is wide open. I think there's a lot of ideas that are going to come out in the next 6 months.
Right.
Just like in the virtual side, we saw the beginning where things had to get done. Then people started adding on ideas. Right now we're doing, we've created on our online galas platform. Our friend Nick has created a watch party for people. So we have a virtual table literally right below the main program. And of course they can still donate and do other things for the fundraising. But, that's another element where the consumer market is driving that.
Yeah.
So whether it was Netflix or Disney Plus or, all of those experiences have added on these watch parties because people want to share something with their, the people that are far away, the remote side. So it's interesting, but there's going to be a lot of ideas, I think, that develop soon. And, hopefully we encourage people to have discussions with each other. And, we look forward to being a part of those discussions. It helps our minds keep moving and keep growing as well. But look, Ryan, we're running about 38 minutes right now. So I think it's time to wrap it up, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
I'm going to let you close this out here.
Doing it off. Okay. All right. Well, yep. Thank you once again for joining us. Please come and check us out next Wednesday, 1:00. We are expecting to have another guest with us at that point, but if not, you're getting us again. So get used to it. But in any case, again, share, comment, like, subscribe, please. It's super helpful, and it really does help us keep this thing going. So and if there's any questions and anything that we can answer, it really would be great to be able to bring somebody up into a broadcast, say like one Julia Emmerich. Thank you. Appreciate everybody watching, and please again come on back next week for another conversation.
And of course, happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. Top of the morning to you.
Keep it green.
Oh no.